Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's first in our series of informational webinars for the Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program. I'm Christine Bevick. I serve as the Deputy Program Director for Cultivating Healthy Environments here at RTI International. Just as a real quick, RTI serves as the grant maker for Region 7. We're an independent nonprofit dedicated to improving the human condition. We provide research, development, and technical services to local, state, and federal governments, nonprofits, and commercial clients worldwide. The Grantmakers program is led out of our Transformative Research Unit for Equity, affectionately known as TRUE, and that division transforms traditional research practices and mindsets to reimagine and create systems that advance equity and social justice. Today's webinar, as Patrick noted, is applying for non-competitive awards. So today I'm joined by Jeff Severin and Michelle DeHaven from the Heartland EJ Center, and then also Laura Baum is with the Cultivating Healthy Environments, and she'll be helping to facilitate our Q&A today. So looking forward to the questions that you have. Feel free to drop those into the Q&A. We're going to try and answer those live as we go through each of the different slides. All right, next slide. All right, so by the end of today, what we're hoping is that we're able to we're going to review the goals and objectives for the program for Region 7 here. Hopefully, you'll be able to understand the difference between a non-competitive versus a competitive application, so you can choose which one best fits your organization. We're going to identify what qualifies an organization as severely capacity constrained. We know that this has been a big question from our previous sessions, and we're going to dig into the key elements of a non-competitive application and how it's evaluated. So hopefully the goal by the end of all this is that you feel comfortable in moving forward to apply for this program and submitting your application for a non-competitive. All right. Next slide. All right, so quick overview, quick refresh. Wanted to take a minute to review the intent and aims of the Cultivating Healthy Environments Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program. All right, that's a mouthful, I realize. All right, so in this, EPA has this program as a whole represents one of the largest investments EPA has made to address climate change and advance environmental justice. The program itself is designed as a pass-through model whereby EPA passes the funds through the grant makers to distribute and manage the smaller subawards to community-based organizations. That's a little intended to be more efficient than the traditional federal grant-making process. So as a whole, the TCGM program is designed to provide those federal funds to community-based organizations and other eligible organizations to really support the planning, assessment, and development of community-based projects. Next slide. So in doing so, to help meet these program goals, projects funded under this program should directly benefit and empower communities to address local priorities. So as you're thinking about what you're applying for and how your organization is going to, for in this case, build the capacity, we want to make sure that they're also focused on community and the priorities within your community as well. So as you're going through and preparing the different sections, we want to make sure that you're incorporating those into your project descriptions, into the lists of your activities, into how you're going to be capturing and identifying success. And we're going to cover those today. So when we're reviewing, when we're doing our initial administrative review, when our external reviewers are reviewing the competitive proposals, and when the community advisory boards are making decisions about applications, they're going to be looking at how well your application responds to the program aims of, one, addressing the longstanding environmental and health challenges within your community, how it's improving health equity and resilience of underserved communities, and most importantly, how it's benefiting disadvantaged populations. So for the non-competitives, while you may be focusing on building the foundations and capacity of your own organization, the intent of those efforts should be towards the greater good. So we're going to dig into how you're able to communicate that a little bit further along. All right, next slide. So just as a quick refresh, regardless of whether you're applying for a non-competitive or competitive funding, the applying organization, your organization must be an eligible entity. So you nonprofit, community-based or grassroots nonprofit organization, this is that your articles of incorporation and recognized as a nonprofit within your state. You do not need to be a 501c3, so you don't need to have that federal tax exempt status. That's not a requirement. You can be a philanthropic or civic organization. You can also be from tribal governments, both federally recognized and state recognized, or also be part of an intertribal consortia. Local governments serving populations of less than 50,000 are also eligible. Those are all outlined and detailed in the NOFO. And what we want to do is, because we realize we're starting to get into the meat of some of these pieces, is Laura's going to go ahead and drop in the PDF of these slides, because we want you to be able to listen and think about the questions that you have as we're going through these. And sometimes if you're busy trying to write things down quickly, we don't want you to have to be distracted by that. So Laura's going to drop that into the chat for everyone. So you can open that, you can look at it, you can click along, click ahead, but anything that you have questions about, you can drop those into the Q&A. All right, next slide. So TCGM as a whole consists of 4 opportunities. So your organization should choose which one is going to best fit for your project. They're project-based, so there's a beginning, middle, and end, essentially, where it's a defined set period there. There is nothing that's going to prevent you from applying to all 4. However, if you submit the same or similar project to multiple categories, most likely you're going to be asked to prioritize which application. And if you've applied for a tier 3, you may not be considered under the non-competitive category. So if you're applying for non-competitive, your organization should really focus on that application first. And then in the next few slides, we'll dig into some of those reasons why. All right, let's get in there. All right, so tier 1, so the non-competitive awards actually fit under the tier 1. And so these are non-competitive foundational support projects. And so we use, again, the project term because we're defining that there is a start versus an end there. So first, just let's review the differences in the application process. We got to start somewhere of how are these different. So the non-competitives are in the program definition of what the goal is of the work that's being done, and then also the review process. So as you're preparing your application, you'll still need to go through and fill out all 4 sections of the application, but there's fewer questions about your project. So instead of having, I believe we've got 14 in the project information section, we've got you only have half those questions that you have to respond to. So when you're going through and you reach that section, and you'll see where you select in the drop down, once you select non-competitive, you're not going to see any of those other questions. So that really helps to reduce some of that confusion. We're going to have separate webinars on describing your organization. So that first section about organizational information, that's our next one. We'll let you know about the links and details for those. And we're also going to be having a separate webinar on budget. So we're kind of going to skim those a little bit today. But really, we've got those separate webinars that you can attend to be able to dig into those a little bit more. So today we're going to focus on the reduced question set about the project needs. So those dark blue boxes. So as it goes through, the big difference also with the application process is that once you submit, your application is going to go through the initial administrative review, and then it's going to go to the CAB for determination. And that CAB is the community advisory boards. There are also going to be some upcoming information sessions about those as well. All right, let's dig into this. Okay, so if you have the NOFO in front of you, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, you can flip over to pages 17 and 18 to read along on these. All of the information here is also in that document as well. So what we wanted to do is just review what the intent of non-competitive support is, and that is to make funds available for severely capacity constrained um, community-based organizations or entry-level applicants. So if your organization has never applied for funding before, this is the opportunity that we want you to pursue. So these funds are intended to assist organizations during the initial steps of their work. So if you are well embedded in your community and you've been working on things for many years, this may or may not be the best fit for you. So this is really to help organizations with those initial steps to address specific issues um, that are related to conducting assessments. So you want to be moving forward from where you are to move forward. So you should be getting started or be getting ready to better understand or address a specific issue within your community. If your organization also has, if you've hit a wall in your past efforts of trying to pursue funding because you've identified that your organization has, there are limits to what your organization has been able to do. This is also that opportunity for you to apply. So we want to encourage you to apply as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to really share that so that you're best positioned for this application. Non-competitive projects, again, the set period, defined time, can be used to help support your organization in how you might need assistance developing your organization's capacity before you move into essentially a full-scale project. So funding for these is um, up to 75,000 for 1 year. And we'll just say that your budget can be less than 75,000. So if there's something that your organization needs to be doing, but maybe it's only 25,000 or maybe it's only 50,000, your budget can be less than that. You don't have to try and spend up to 75,000. You are limited to the 75,000 as you go through that. So all right. And real quick, I see, Kathy, your question over there. If there's going to be separate webinars for Tier 3 competitives, we're going to have a separate webinar for projects which are going to be focused on the competitive. So whether it's a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And we're trying to gauge where we are right now as to whether or not we need a webinar specifically for Tier 3 competitives that are going to involve construction. And that's one of the differentiators for Tier 3. But we've got that. Those are going to be coming up, so you can definitely sign up for those and bring your questions around your Tier 3s. All right, so moving forward, how do we define, what do we mean when we say severely capacity constrained? So one of the things is that through this program, EPA recognizes that each region is unique, and as such, they've allowed each grant maker, they've assigned the responsibility to the grant maker to define what is meant by severely capacity constrained organizations, because an organization that is severely capacity constrained in one region may not be the same as another region. And so they have given the grant makers the latitude to make those definitions. Ours are very similar to the other grant makers so that there isn't huge disparities in those definitions. For this program, we have, the bar is fairly low in terms of what your organization, whether your organization may be considered severely capacity constrained. So if your organization meets at least one of the 3 criteria below, then you're going to qualify. So if your organization's physical address, if your organization's mailing address is located in an IRA, Inflation Reduction Act identified disadvantaged community, and this is using the CGEST tool to identify that. So if you're located in one of those zip codes, then your organization it would be considered severely capacity constrained based on the environment in which your organization operates. Second criteria is much broader. It is the opposite of here's a very specific location. And this is done intentionally. So whether your project If your organization's not located within one of these communities, but the work that you are proposing to do and the issues that you are addressing are going to benefit a disadvantaged community, if your organization um, if the issues extend beyond the borders of the IRA identified disadvantaged communities, then this gives us that opportunity for the community advisory boards to take into consideration those benefits to the communities. So um, and then lastly, this is probably the most clear cut, is that if your organization's budget in the last fiscal year, again, however your organization defines your fiscal year, if you go follow a federal calendar, or if your fiscal year starts in July, whatever your fiscal year is, if your organization's budget was less than 500,000, then your organization would meet this criteria. And so as you're going through in that organizational information, there's a budget question with different categories. So if you select prefer not to answer, we may follow up just to make sure that you are fitting in that category. We're not asking for you don't need to provide a copy of your organization's budget unless there are some questions from the administrative review. All right, so Holly, I see your question here before we dig into the application questions. That it's better. So the question is, did I understand correctly that it's better to submit a competitive grant application first and then the non-competitive? It's actually reversed. So if your organization is able to submit something and is ready to submit for one of the competitive tiers, then you should be applying for those. If your organization's not ready for a competitive for one of those, for the assessment, planning, or development levels, then that's when you want to look at the non-competitives. So if you're not sure where to start with the non-competitives. Of what your organization needs to do, because it's all about getting ready so that you can then be able to pursue not only future funding opportunities through this program, but also larger and other federal funding opportunities as well. So we're setting you up. We really want this, especially these non-competitives are intended to set organizations up for success in the future so that you're able to move forward and be able to go after larger funding to be able to address the issues in your community. So whether you're going for brownfields or other clean water funds or clean air funds, we want to make sure that at the end of your year, you feel empowered and able to pursue those. All right, so let's get into some of those key application questions. All right. You ready? Let's go. Okay, so when you log in and create your application, you're going to see over on the left-hand side your sample project. So if you haven't had a chance to go in go in and create your account, go to apply.thrivingenvironments.org and create your account. Real easy. And then you'll be able to complete your eligibility check, which asks about your organization, which will then lead you to your Region 7 program. And then you can apply. So once you hit that apply button, you'll be asked to, you'll see that menu over on the side with the 4 parts. So the first part is applicant information. We're asking a short series of questions about your organization. So this is required for all applicants. So if you are, whether you're going for a non-competitive or a competitive, you're going to be asked all of these questions. Now for the non-competitive, the questions here that are bolded, that's where we're going to ask you to share about your organization and where you can really dig into letting us know how your organization is limited or constrained in its current capacity. And so, well, what does that mean? So once you've gotten all of these pieces, and I will put that disclaimer, the unique entity identifier, especially for non-competitives, it's going to ask you yes it's going to say like, does your organization have a unique entity identifier? And there's yes, no, or don't know. And so if it's yes, we're going to ask you to enter it. And if it's no or don't know, that's okay. Those answers are completely valid, and we want to know that, because that's going to mean that that's one of the first steps that your organization is going to take to be able to receive federal funding, is to be able to have that identifier. So there's actually other workshops that we're going to cover when we dig into all of these questions for the organization or the describing your organization webinar. We're going to break these down even more. But for non-competitives, we're going to focus on the bolded questions for today. All right, next slide. Okay, so this first piece here is digging into tell us about your organization, which is such a broad question when your organization probably is doing so much and doing such great work. So part of what we've done is, for the whole application, is that 500 words is your maximum. We don't want you to have to hire a grant writer or spend enormous amounts of time writing pages and pages and pages. What we're looking for is that in telling us about your organization, we want you to start with addressing these 4 points. So 1, tell us whether or not your organization has received funding. Have you been able to receive federal grants or others? And if this is your first opportunity or first application for federal funding, we want to know that too, because that's one of those under severely capacity constrained that we're going to be looking for, that the CABs are also going to be looking for as well. We also want to know about some of the challenges that your organization has faced in receiving funds from the federal government. And there's the next question that we're going to go to. They're related, so you're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but we want to make sure that you mention it here. So you're going to start mentioning what some of those challenges might be. And just down the corner there, you see the puzzle piece. There's lots of different pieces that are going to be going into your application. And so one of the things that we want to do is to really, start writing your application in a Google Doc or a Word doc or even a notepad. I'm a notepad person on Post-its and index cards, but something where you can help to organize your thoughts outside of the application platform, because the application platform's like, hey, let's go through and put all those different things. And Leslie, to your point, your question about editing your application, you can always go back and edit while you're still working on it. So the difference between the next and save and continue editing, next will take you to the next page. Save and continue editing is going to keep you on the same page. So if you hit next, and you haven't completed all of the sections on that page, then you're going to want to make just say okay, drop something into wherever it's giving you that error message, so that way you can go next to the next question. And then the first part of your question, how to go back and edit a section, that has a check mark over on the left-hand side where you have that menu. With those 4 parts, just click on the one that you want to get to, and then next to get to the page that you need to go back to. But we'll reiterate that in a little bit, and also in future webinars as well. So the first 2 parts of tell us about your organization are about the challenges in federal funding. The next 2, we want to hear about your organization's experience working in environmental and health related issues. We want to know what your organization has done in relation to climate change and environmental justice. So you might already have this language on your website or in a brochure or somewhere else where you're able to pull that in and use that as a starting point. So hopefully your organization doesn't have to start from scratch. You can use what you have already. And that also includes, for the 4th item here, is your organization's experience working directly with your community on projects and issues. So going back to that criteria for severely capacity constrained, number four is really, that fourth point is really where you can speak to how what you're going to be doing is intended to benefit disadvantaged communities, and how your organization is also working with the community as well. Um, so, one of the things we want to say also is don't rush it. These aren't just quick throw it together, submit it. When we were thinking about how much time it's going to take to draft these, um, we really, our initial estimate for just this question, 500 words, we put that at about 3 hours. And that includes the time to review any of the existing information about your organization, to gather together any of your other materials, to draft the response, to revise the response. You should get to the point where you're able to copy and paste into the application platform. So that's the goal. And it's going to take a little bit of time. 500 words, again, it's short, but we want to make sure you're also capturing what you have. So as we go through with some of these other questions, we're going to kind of include that sort of time cue. So that way you can kind of see, like, are you spending too much time, too little time? Like, is it right where it feels that you've given it that thought? All right. So next question. So this is where the challenges that you faced are going to relate to turning those challenges into opportunities. All right. And Patrick, if we can go to that next slide. There we go. All right. So item two is where you introduce the challenges that your organization has faced. And this is the question where you really can expand on that. You've got 250 words. So this is a really good place to highlight where your organization would like to build its capacity. So if you have done if you're familiar with SWOT analyses. But one of the things is taking what might be a challenge and making it that opportunity to help your organization move forward. So if you've been limited in your ability to manage finances or to set up an accounting system, this is where you can highlight that you want to build the financial health and capacity of your organization. You can also think about organizing your response here to identify what might be that challenge, to describe what that barrier is, and then how that funding is going to help your organization overcome that barrier or address that challenge, and really be able to move forward to do the really important work. So any of these, anywhere you have the open text, the 500 words, 250 words, you can use bulleted lists. We are welcoming bulleted lists here. So, we wanted to keep these shorter. It's not a writing test, it's an application for funding. So for this one, for turning those challenges, like what are the issues? Spending 2 to 3 hours on this, they can be separate. It's not, nobody's timing you or putting a stopwatch on how much you're taking. But if you get to a point where you're kind of struggling and you've spent more than that time, go ahead and reach out to Heartland to be able to get some additional assistance there. And make sure that you're registered for our next webinar on describing your organization. All right. So next, we move into the project section. So once you've got the organization information there, the next part is the project piece. And this is where we have that drop down where you choose whether you're doing a competitive or a non-competitive. So if you select the tier 1 foundational support non-competitive, you'll see it there in the parentheses. What we're asking for is enter a title and how many months you think you'll need to complete your project. So if you're not sure what to call it, you could just put it like working title, or my proposal, or must come back and fix this. Or if you've already have a really good vision and name for what your project is going to be called, you can enter it in here. You can drop in 12 months, you can drop in 6 months. Again, you can come back and edit these before you submit. So for these, this is your placeholder. And then if you click on that next, that's going to take you over to the next page. If you leave either one of these blank, you will get that error message. So that's where it's like, just put something in the field so you can move on to the next question. All right. So next, the question is going to be, this is a multiple choice where you can select all that apply. And what we're looking for is we want you to identify the areas in which the funding is going to help your organization to build capacity. So regardless of where your organization is, you probably could check all that apply. Um, but what we're asking here is for this funding, for the 75,000 or however much you're asking for, we want you to focus on, maybe about two, three, maybe four for this project. So which ones are going to be the most critical or important? So identifying those areas where you need the greatest assistance to support your organization as you're moving forward to address local and environmental health issues. Like, think back to your challenges, back to those 250 words that you have there, to those notes there, and see which ones stand out. Is it, I mentioned the earlier example about challenges with accounting. And this is where you check the box for financial health. But it might also be around staff management and human resources, because you're now able to pay your volunteers and be able to actually bring on part-time or full-time staff. And now you've got to worry about payroll. So that could be part of how your organization needs to grow. If you're not sure, or if there's an area that just doesn't fit into these categories, there's always that other field where you can describe that. All right. Okay, so let's dig into those critical steps in building your capacity. Okay, so now we're getting into kind of the meat of what your organization is going to be doing. So this is where really working in that Google Doc, or working in the Word document or notebook, or Post-its, index cards, however, can be really helpful to brainstorm and connect these different areas, the different capacity areas from the previous question, into what you're going to be doing. So here we're asking you to describe the key activities that the organization is going to do to carry out the project. So this is, what are you going to be doing? So if your organization needs to or plans to hire staff personnel, or maybe you need a consultant just to be able to do that first pass, this is where you want to list it and then describe the work that's going to be completed. So again, if you've got a series of activities that you're wanting to do, you can provide that in a bulleted list here with those descriptions. So again, it may take some time to break that down of what are we going to be doing for this project. So it takes some time. And when we were doing this, we estimated that it was going to take, somewhere upwards of 4 to 5 hours. And this is also, again, we're going to be doing a series of work sessions coming up too. So in addition to the information sessions for the webinars, we're also going to be having work sessions that you can attend and work with TICTAC, and we'll have some of the Grantmaker folks there too to help you dig into this. So Jeff and Michelle are here, and they're going to highlight some of that timing of when those sessions are going to be in a little bit. So with this, it's, what are you going to be doing? And then the next question that you're going to have is looking at what does success look like? So, okay, so you do these things. And, this is actually probably one of my favorite questions, because it's, what at the end of the day, what is success going to look like for your organization? So if you do those activities, what is it? How will you know that the funding has helped? How do you know that you've already been able to take that step to make a difference? Now, success here, this is still 75,000 isn't going to solve all the problems in your community, or necessarily remedy anything. But from the activities that your organization is doing, what you've mentioned before, how is that going to help your organization take that step forward to begin addressing those issues. So it's that this is where you can really begin to reinforce the importance of the work that your organization is doing, and how building your organization's capacity is going to help you then achieve greater things. So you could take time on this one to talk with others in your organization. So, hey, if we can bring on 2 people, even part-time, what is that going to help our organization do moving forward? And it's okay if you've got different ideas of success. What you think of as of success might be different than someone else in your organization, and that's okay. And this is a good place to be able to capture that. So it could be that bringing on additional staff will allow us to do X and Y, and so you've got the 500 words in there to be able to work through that. Thinking about, you could do a match to here's the key activity, and then here's what this will help us to do. So we want to be able to make those connections between, for your whole bigger plan there. All right. Okay. So the last question is about what your project is focused on. So this is really communicating how you're going, what is the plan to reach that success. So you've got your key activities, you figured out, so you figure out how long, like what does success look like? How do you know if you've actually completed them? And now for here, what we're looking for is where you can think about how long it's going to take you to do that. So if you've got this activity, is it something that you can, making sure that it's something that you can accomplish within the time frame that you've set for yourself. So what does that timeline start to look like? What is that series of events over the next 12 months going to look like? When are you going to begin different activities? Do you need to do one thing before you do something else? So breaking down those activities into when you think they're going to be done, what you need to do to accomplish those. And then also, this is where we want to know of how you're going to track your progress. Are you going to use a open source software? I think actually that Google has a nice planner that you can use to be able to do project management. There's a lot of free options out there and resources where you can break things out. So here, what we're looking for is thinking about what is that outline. You've got 250 words, so this is probably where you're going to bring in your bullets and your timing of how you're going to break things out. Again, you've already said what you want to do. That's in the previous sections. So this is where you can highlight when you are going to do them. So one of the things you can do also here is to be sure that you're flagging milestones and accomplishments along the way. Celebrate the success of, after 3 months, this is where we're going to be. After, 5 months, this is where we're going to be. What are you going to accomplish towards your larger goal within those 12 months? All right, so by this time, you've already been thinking about your activities. You've already been thinking about what does success look like. So, this section here might take you about 2 to 3 hours to knock out. And again, if you're getting stumped on this part, we've got some work sessions that you can bring those questions to be able to address those. And I am just pausing on some of these Q&As to see if there's anything specific. All right. Okay. Next section, budget. We've got one slide for this because we've got a whole nother webinar that covers these here. So first off, this is not something you're going to knock out real quick. And I didn't get a chance to put it on here, but your overall budget is probably going to take you somewhere upwards of 12 hours to draft. So if you can whip out a budget real quick, that's great. Love that. But if this is your first time pulling together a budget, it will take time to do it. We've got this whole other webinar on this, and I'm looking at the time, and Laura's also probably checking time as well. But this section, what I wanted to highlight is this is where you're going to figure out how much those activities are going to cost. Can you do what you want to do for the budget that and the funding that's available? So here, the other few pieces to mention are if you're under a non-competitive, you're not eligible for equipment. So if your laptops are not equipment, they're supplies, because they are less than $10,000. The construction is not eligible. That's only eligible under a tier 3. And if you can start doing construction, then you are non-competitive, is not for your organization. And then indirects. And so if you're not sure about what an indirect is, then go to the webinar on the budgets, and we'll kind of break those down as to what indirects mean. So right off the bat, there's 9 budget categories here, and 3 of those you can just put a 0 into, so that you don't have to worry about those. So last slide, last section of the application is around technical assistance. Now, this is a short series of questions about whether your organization has received any technical assistance. It's yes or no. These are not part of the application review. So your organization, when your application is reviewed by the community advisory board as a non-competitive, they're not going to see whether or not you received any technical assistance. What this does do is it helps us as grant makers, and also for Heartland, to be able to understand where we can provide some additional assistance. Because if you've already received some technical assistance, then how can we further augment that and really dig into where those needs are? Or if you haven't, then great, we can be able to make sure that you've got that support in terms of looking towards future funding opportunities as well. So this section, no matter how you answer it, it doesn't impact the scoring of your application. And I will say it's not so much, we don't do numeric rubrics. It is how well, but there isn't a number associated with your application. Really, this question is about whether there's an opportunity to identify additional support to really help your organization. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jeff to really highlight some of what is available as you move forward with this. So Jeff? Oh, you're muted.
Thanks,
There we
Christine.
go.
Excuse me. Yeah, so my name's Jeff Severn. I'm the Associate Director for the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. So we are the technical assistance provider for Region 7. So if you're in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, or the adjoining indigenous nations, we are your technical assistance center to help you with this. We provide support for any sort of grant that you're applying for to support your environmental justice and energy justice programs. But specifically for Thriving Communities grant making assistance, we've got a few additional things that we're developing, or we have developed, that we're providing as additional support. So a few things just to kind of learn more about the specifics of our organization and how we can help. We have a few meet and greets that are upcoming. Sessions are currently scheduled for January 9th, 23rd, February 6th, and February 19th. And you can register for those on our website at heartlandej.org and click on events. We'll drop those in the chat here in a bit. We're also hosting office hours to provide grant-specific support. So once you've watched this webinar, whether you're watching it live with us or you watch the video later and are ready to get some support on this part of your grant application, you can start by submitting a request for assistance on our website. Again, go to heartlandej.org and click on the request support button. And then you can visit our TA page to sign up to the type of appointment, whether it's just a quick 15-minute question that you want answered, or you want to kind of follow along through the grant writing process and get some more detailed time with one of our staff members to help you with that. We also have a number of partners. So EPN, the Environmental Protection Network, is one of those that has some additional TCGM related services. So sam.gov registration office hours, they can help you get registered on sam.gov. They do that every other Wednesday, and the next one will be January 15th. at 1 p.m. Central. So if you're needing support with that, you can join their webinar or their office hours, excuse me. They also have some additional resources on their website, and I'll drop the link to the chat in the chat there, but they've got a kind of step-by-step guide for applying for grants that also includes links to their AI tool to help with kind of getting started with some of the writing. And we'll be also sharing their budget writing guide as part of the work that we're doing here. And then finally, we will be hosting some grant writing workshops after this first cycle. So after January 31st deadline, we'll be hosting some virtual and in-person options on a quarterly basis across the 4-state region so that you can get hands-on support with grant writing. That will be probably a 3-part series to really dig into each of these sections and have someone there on site to help you through the application process. Next slide. So this is the best way to reach us. Again, go to heartlandej.org, click on that contact us page, and there is a form to fill out. Just really need to get some basic information about your organization, what you're looking for in terms of support. One of the options is that you have questions about Grantmaker, and that will get you connected to one of our staff to get you started with some additional support. If you just want to kind of stay connected with us outside of this, you're not looking for any technical assistance, but just want to kind of know what's going on with us, subscribe to our email, or follow us on our socials. I think that brings us to some time for Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. So I am Laura. I'm with RTI and the TikTok. I'm sorry, with Thriving Communities grant makers. And we are trying to answer your questions here. So I wanted to field a couple. There's one here that's asking about funding. So how many non-competitive awards will be made in Region 7? Christine, would
I
you like to
love
take
this.
that?
Everyone always loves the number game. It's like,
Yeah.
how many are there going to be? So we don't have a set number of awards for that are going to be made within Region 7. So what we do know is that in the terms of the proportion of awards that we're going to be making, our goal is to award a higher proportion, higher number of non-competitive awards compared to some of our competitive awards because they're smaller. Those dollars go further. We can make more of those awards across the region. So there again, there isn't a set number. It is one collective pot of funds. And so what we'll do is those decisions are going to be made on a quarterly basis. And whenever they come out, there's going to be that breakdown of here's how many non-competitives were made. Here's how many tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 awards that have been made, and the total amount of funding expended. And so that'll also provide insights into what is the amount of funding that's remaining as well. Because yeah, so it's like as we're accepting applications on a rolling basis, I've looked at rolling basis submissions, and it's always one of those like, is there still money in the pot? Like, are there still funds available? Should I still invest the time and energy to apply? And the answer is yes, because we're gonna provide that information to you, and you can as we start rolling out the different funding opportunity or the announcements of what's been funded, you can also ping us back on the contact us if you can't find that information readily. But we're gonna have that. So to answer your question, there is not a set number of awards that are going to be made. So for non-competitives.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Another is about what tiers they should apply for and how the tiers work together. So can you submit a tier 2 or 3 proposal before fully completing a tier 1 activity? They're worried about that it would shorten the amount of time to start the next project as they wait for the funding if they
Yeah.
don't do it before the first one's done.
Yeah, so today we're focusing on the non-competitives, but just to quickly address this, so if you apply for a non-competitive or a tier 1 and you've received that award and you're working and you're engaging in those activities. So you started the, started that process, you can, yes, you can also prepare to submit a proposal for whatever's next. So you can, so if you're 3 months into your non-competitive and you know that you're going to be going for a tier one, you can start that application because yes, there's going to be that time period. And we fully recognize that yes, you want to be able to have some of that continuity of funding. Overall, the period that we have a very set defined window of when we're going to be able to support projects. So all the funds, all the invoices, everything's going to need to be in by a set date. And that's why the last date, the very last date to submit an application, and those are going to be the capacity building ones because it's going to have a 6-month window. The very end, we're trying to push that window out as far as we can, is going to be April 27th, 2027, because we have a set, the IRA funds are very limited in terms of when the funds need to be expended. So that unfortunately is not an ongoing pot of funds. So right now we're working on making sure that all of those are going to be going out, but not necessarily in that first round. So again, it goes back to we're going to provide that transparency of how many funds are available. But yes, if you've received an award, go ahead and you can submit. So, all right.
I have one that just came through about the non-competitive specifically that I think is really important to address. So it says, I feel that we're in a chicken egg situation as a new organization that would like to build capacity for outreach and relationship building. Yet one of the questions is around experience in the community. Is this something we would truly qualify for?
Yes. So, but going back to where that first question about tell us about your organization. And for a non-competitive capacity building, this is a really good fit for your organization. And I am not sure if you had the related question about the challenge with outreach and coordination. We had another one where you may have that initial experience and you have results um, working in a community, but if you are beginning to identify a community, and because you could have an emergent issue of going, hey, is there, this is an issue that we are now seeing, and you're just organizing to address that issue. And that's where tell us about your organization around what your experience is that you're just starting to build that relationship with the community, and being forthcoming about that and saying, we really want to build our communication capacity, our outreach capacity, and being able to say, like, here's why we need to do that. Here are the issues that we're going to be able to address by having these stronger relationships within our area. So hopefully that does sort of reassure, like this is a really good program for that. I've met with organizations that are like, we are just organizing. We are just, working on the articles of incorporation. Is this something that we could even pursue? And it's like, if you've got the articles of incorporation, then you're going to be able to go forward and be able to get your UEI, then be able to get funding. And yes, the non-competitives are right there because, you're going to meet that criteria of if you're newly formed, you might not have a budget from last year. And if you have no budget, then your budget was below $500,000. So check, you meet that criteria. So yeah, if the other piece with this is, if you submit it, we're going to look at it, we're going to review it. If there's any concerns or questions, we're going to provide feedback to you as well. So it's a little different from other programs where it kind of goes into the abyss and you might not know. So for here, we want you to be able to address any concerns and move forward and be successful. So I
Right.
think we got what time for one more question?
Okay.
Maybe two.
I think the questions would be about applying to both either non-competitive and competitive grants for one with the same organization, or can that same organization apply for more than one tier one grant?
All
I think by
right.
tier one, they mean the non-competitive.
Yeah. So if you're, or if the really the goal is again those early organizations that are just getting started with federal funding. So if your organization is able to go after one of the competitives, we want to push you there. If your organization is just getting started or just beginning to address an issue, or if you've repeatedly hit challenges in addressing issues and you need to essentially create that foundation to move forward, that's when the non-competitives are there. If your organization submits a non-competitive as well as a competitive, we will likely be following up with you during that initial administrative review to ask if there is a priority there, especially if the projects are closely linked. So again, that goes back to severely capacity constrained in the sense that foundational, getting started, initial steps. So. Yep.
Right. And I think we're at a good time. There are 2 questions remaining, so we can follow up with those on the Q&A on the website later, I believe. We'll have those. And I know there are a couple other things you'd like to address. The feedback poll also just popped up. So we would love it if you could just give us your feedback on how this session went. And that's just an anonymous poll to help us improve going forward. Christine, would you like
Great.
to do the final slides?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So this is that highlights those complementary uh, um, upcoming workshops and technical assistance, making sure that you're registered for those. So you can, there's lots coming, lots of these markers on the road here. So again, this webinar series is supplemented through Heartland with one-on-one post-webinar support. So go to the website, heartlandej.org, to sign up for those, and then go to, you can register for future webinars on the Cultivating Healthy Environments website. So, all right. Stay connected. You'll get emails too as well. And I think that's where we're at. We got one more after that. All right. Yep. This is just the website where you guys can go and log in for more information and follow us on our socials. So. Thank you all for taking time today to be able to attend. This recording will be posted to our website. And as Laura mentioned, there will be also our frequently asked questions that will follow along. And you'll receive a link to the recording, and be sure to go onto the website, region7.thrivingenvironments.org, to register for the rest of the upcoming series. And we'll look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Laura. And thanks, Patrick. So, have a great day.